Alright, so this is a state of Manim right now. I've written an object that I can use to draw a triangle. So that's cool. Also, I think I've started to use the hot reloading in my regular work, so that's going to help in finding out some of the problems with it. Okay, but this is a really simple example for basically using OpenGL, like using this mesh object. So that's pretty cool. I wonder if this is something. I think it'd be fairly. Nah, on the other hand, I would send up a PR for this, but this is already on top of a lot of other stuff that hasn't been PR'd yet, and that might make it hard. Let me see if I can do this with multiple triangles. I should be able to. And I'll just, I guess, make this -1. Actually, what I should do is just have one at -1, -1, -1, 1, and then 1, 1. So that'll be the top left, and then one at these with the middle coordinates flipped. This should make a square. Nope, messed something up. Need more colors. Yeah, that's fine. That's actually just what I want. So I do something like shift it in the X direction, decrease these. Great. I've never been so happy to draw triangles. Now there are a few ways I can improve on this. One of which, one thing that'd be pretty cool is if I could specify the shader in line. So like right now this vertex colors one. If I change this to default, I think there'll actually be, yeah, a problem with passing in basically data that isn't needed. So I have to comment this, add the uniform, and this will be like 1, 0, 0, just something. Size 4, and 1. Okay, that's pretty good. But I'd still like to be able to specify that shader inline. Let's go back to here. That's great. And here, when I'm creating the shader, how can I... What I should probably do is I can either put the name here. And I think it should be a single attribute called source, which is none by default. And so it says if name is not none, so it normally does this stuff. Otherwise, I'm gonna say if source is not none. I don't think it takes any more logic than just this. And then I can pull out the vertex source. Look for a key called vertex shader, then another one called fragment shader. look for a key called vertex shader, then another one called fragment shader. And I'll just use that source to create the program. Oh, actually, I think I could just do... Can I just do star? Star of source? So one thing is, if I do it that way, I'm gonna have to make sure I copy the code really precisely. Maybe I'm gonna copy over these shaders. So I'm gonna have just vertex. It's gonna go to a string like this. This will be source. Shader source. So something like that, and then just have the fragment shader do the same thing. I just copy this over. Is the way to do this like that? That the keys are to be strings too? Okay, that seems fine, I think. So this will give me the source. And when I create the shader, I'm gonna try passing that in instead. So source equals shader source. With luck, maybe this will do the same thing. But probably not. Okay, got an error. We're in color. Which actually doesn't make sense to me. If it wrote the shader program based on this, I guess I could still take a name parameter, actually. But if it did this, then why would there be any bug with the in color? Was I copied something wrong? That seems fine. In mesh.render, trying to do this simple vertex array. So even though this will work, yeah, it's got to be something with the way the source is defined. I wonder if the new line at the front is doing something? Since this is reading the exact same code. Yeah, vertex shader, fragment shader, let's see. Hey, discrete games, what's going on? Let's see. I'm going to set a breakpoint here to make sure it's actually stopping here. And it didn't. Which is weird. Oh, I guess it makes sense because I switched this too. Let me try going back to this. And it still actually didn't stop there. So I need to see what's happening when this is initialized. And I think I already see it actually. The name is defaulted to default, the string default. So that's a problem. This I think should be just none. Then I can set the name here. The context is required. If name is not, then I can set the name here. The context is required. If name is not none. Okay, so if the name isn't none, then it's going to look for the files with that name. If the source is not none, that's actually, I think it's, what I should do is if source is not none first. But first I'm going to see if this works with the source, and it still doesn't. On 49, program takes one positional argument. What's the one positional argument? I can tell it takes a vertex shader and fragment shader. One positional argument of 3 were given. Context.program star source. I don't see why these lines aren't the exact same. This one and this one and this one. But I guess I'm passing too many arguments. Oh. Nope, just kidding. Still don't see it. I'm going to try unpacking this explicitly. So I'll have vertex shader goes source at vertex shader. And this with fragment. And I think these lines should be the exact same. So let's see if there's any issue with that. Okay, and that works. Just to check that that's working, let me... I'm not good enough with GLSL to just like edit the shader on the fly. I don't think. Let me try doing this. I'll say this, the clip space vertex dot x. I'll just add like a half to it, 0.4. I think I need a semicolon. Okay, and it did move. So it is using the code from here. Or I could do something like frag color. Maybe I can do frag color dot this and frag color dot r equals 1. I think that's allowed. Okay, so this is running the GLSL code straight from here. So that's great. Oh, I think what it was is that it has to be double star of source. So for this, do 2 stars. Great. Now just to clean this up, I think I can have dict. And then not have this surrounded with a string. I think this will work. Hopefully. Looks like it. And then I'll just move it onto another line. That'll look nicer. Great. Okay, so this will, with this, it's possible to write inline source, although it might not always be a good idea. And I think what I'll do is here where I'm caching the program, I think I'll do that even if you write inline code, just so that it won't be reused. And I don't need these. If this, I don't think this warning should be here. It should check for the source first, because what should happen is it's going to check for the source. Then if you provided a name, then it's going to cache it under that name. So either way, it's going to shader program cache, index that in the name, and it's going to save it there. I think we might need to include a tutorial on shaders in the docs for OpenGL render. Yeah, we definitely should. I still want to do like a crash course on OpenGL for everyone. I guess especially the people developing it, but just for everyone. Like a crash course on OpenGL for everyone. I guess especially the people developing it, but just for everyone. So that people can be up to speed on that. So let's see. Saving the context. Taking the name. Oh, and this will be only if the name is not none. If the name is not none, then I'm going to cache that under the name. If the source is not none, I'm going to generate the program from the source. Otherwise, it's just else. Oh, wait. Else I'm going to generate the program from the files. And this is just if you have a name. Wait, now this should be here. If the name is cached, then you read it from the cache. If you provided, so if you come here, then it isn't cached. So we're going to check the source and then cache it. And this should only be cached if the name isn't none, so that shouldn't be there. So we'll look to the source. If you didn't pass source, then we're going to read it from the file. And either way, if you give a name, then we're going to cache it under the name. So this, I think, makes sense. If the program... See, it's cached. It's not cached, so generate the shader from inline code if it was passed. Otherwise, we're going to search for a file. And then, either way, if you gave a name, then we're going to cache it. Perfect. So now that I've gone through that, I actually don't like the idea of writing the shader source inline. This is a little janky. Well, I guess it is sort of nice to have all of the data up front. Actually, what would be kind of cool is, since this is already hot reloading, maybe it'd be a little better to edit the source in this file. And then if I do that, I could live edit shaders. Wait. So here, okay. Creating the shader, passing the renderer context. This is all the shader code. Should not be a comma there. Guess it's automatic. Setting these uniforms, setting these attributes. So now if I run this, then that works. And if I edit this, then if I'm lucky, maybe something like frag color.r equals 1, I can live edit shaders. That's pretty cool. And that might be pretty useful for when I try to get the camera code to work a little better. Because right now, the way the camera works is a little weird. And I guess I could even do this with attributes. So if I were to decrease the x value of all of the points in this triangle, then it moves. Great. Guess that's what you'd expect. So that's pretty cool. I think what I'm gonna try doing now, well, there are a few things I could try to do. I could improve the camera, because right now the camera basically makes no sense. Or I, basically makes no sense. Or I could improve the way in which the renderer renders mobjects, because the render mobjects method is a little crazy. What I should be doing is like, instead of calling render mobjects, it should just be like meshes equals like self.meshes from mobjects. Something like this. And then for meshes, I'll render them all. That's the way it should render the objects. You know what I'll actually do? I'm gonna write one of these meshes that covers the entire screen, and that'll make it a lot easier to use the shaders from Shader Toy, for example. Once you have those quads that cover the whole screen. So let me close that. Mesh, that's working well. Shader is also working well. I'm gonna write a class that covers the whole screen, yeah. Although I think this code, even though it doesn't do much, I do think this should be saved maybe to an example or something. Just to show what you can do. So I'm gonna go to, oh, this is actually already in the example code. I'll just call this shader example. Yeah, that's fine. Now I'm gonna write a new scene to test with. And with this, I'm going to want a full screen shader. So I think I'll just call this full screen quad. So I'll call it surface. I guess there's a full screen rectangle class, but that's not what I want. Yeah, I'll call it full screen quad. And the goal of this one is going to be, it's going to be a mesh that's going to cover the entire screen. Self, and it's going to call super. And shader, that's going to be determined by the person. The attributes, I guess, will too. The key thing being that the attributes will always have this invert property, which could actually get a little tricky. I don't know if it's always possible to edit the attributes that the user puts in, at least not quickly. Actually, I think that's probably fine. So when I initialize it, I'll do, I guess it's the same thing. Pass in the shader, pass in all the attributes. But when you, at the time that you render, actually not necessarily, yeah, I think at the time that you render, here I'm going to want to call the super class render, but only after editing the attributes. To make it full screen. I guess this init actually isn't needed since it's the same thing. So, how can I edit this to make it full screen? Well, actually, this might not be doable because I don't know the name of the attribute to edit. Actually, this might not be doable because I don't know the name of the attribute to edit. In this particular case, I happen to have invert as the name of the attribute, but without that, I think this might be fine. And the way this might be fine is if I have a requirement on the vertex shader. And so the user can't control that. They only give a fragment shader. So in that case, this will be only a fragment shader. And I'll have it be source set for now in the attributes. So then I can create my own shader. And I'll give it the context from the renderer. Then the source will be a dictionary. And the vertex shader will be hard-coded, and will be probably just this one. And the fragment shader will be whatever they want to pass in. Let's say that fragment shader source. Okay. Shader, then I can initialize it, call a superclass with this shader. Self.attributes, I don't need that. With what does it need? Like the context and shader? Shader and attributes. All right. So now I know this will always be invert. So now what I need to do is edit those attributes. So I think this should possibly work now. If I pass in a fragment shader source like this, meant. Okay, so if I pass in this fragment shader source and the attributes, I guess just this, but only the color. This. Nope. Messed up my paste. Take these attributes. Put them here. Here. And then I can pass in just these attributes. Cool. Why is this so mad at me? Oh, it doesn't even know about full screen quad, I think. I'll do self.add surface. Is any less mad at me now? Argument missing for parameter attributes. It's right here. Why is it so mad at me? Vec4 is not defined. It's like reading this as Python code. I think this just doesn't know what it's talking about, and I'm not actually doing any errors. Oh, I need the context, don't I? If this is inheriting from mesh... No, I guess it doesn't. I'm gonna try just running this. Nope, literally everything crashed. Starting right here. How am I passing these arguments wrong? It only needs the source and the attributes. I'm gonna try passing only the attributes. Okay, so this makes sense. Then for the source... Oh,